Welcome to Debutante Renegade. I've got a crow or a raven really cawing in the background. You'll probably hear that. Just gonna have to deal with it. She won't stop. She's going. Um, I actually rescued a baby dove. I know this is like not on today's topic at all, but I rescued a baby dove from a raven last week. These doves nest every year in a planter right outside of my bedroom, and a giant raven came and invaded the nest last week, and I ran out and the raven took off with one of the babies. The other one was pushed to the edge of the planter. It was like about to fall out of the planter. And so I scooped it up and I put it back in the nest, and I just crossed my fingers and prayed that the mama and papa dove would come back, and they did. And that baby's like doing well. I checked on it today. It's totally doing well. It's okay. So I don't know if that's the same. That raven is like pissed at me because I stole its like half of its lunch, and you can hear it. It's trying to sabotage my podcast now. It's revenge. Anyway, welcome to Debutante Renegade. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about arguments. The do's and don'ts of arguments. Before we get started, if you like this video, give it a like. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the little bell notification button next to it so you never miss one of my videos. And I love you forever. And on to today's episode. Arguments. None of us have arguments, right? You don't argue, do you? I don't. Not guilty at all of arguing. I am not argumentative in the least. So I've put together a list of some helpful tips when you get in an argument. And this actually goes with arguing with anybody, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, or whether it's a partner. But I think, I guess we tend to argue the most maybe with our partners, our families, etc. So, but I really think this helps with your partner. But it helps with any argument, really. These tips work for arguing with anyone, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, or whether it's a life partner. So hopefully they can help you. I feel like tips like this are especially helpful for me when arguing with a life partner, for sure. So first, I'm going to start off with the don'ts. One thing that people tend to do when they're in a relationship and they're arguing is they will use something that their partner did previously in the relationship. Like maybe early on in the relationship, your partner did something that wasn't cool, and a year later you're having an argument and you bring up that thing from the past that they did, and it's not necessarily relevant for this. That's going to trigger them. So I think that it can be really challenging to do this, but I would hesitate to bring up things that happened in the past in your relationship, and even before your relationship. Like if your partner did something in high school, or their family always gives them a hard time about something, then bringing those things up, they're going to be triggers. Bringing up past arguments, it's going to be triggers. And I know that's really hard when we're having a disagreement, because typically in relationships, it seems like we're almost always having the same disagreements, right? So it's really easy to bring those previous disagreements up and kind of plug them into the current argument or disagreement that's going on. What I would challenge everyone out there to refrain from doing that, and to keep it very much about the specifics of whatever it is that's going on in this moment. Try to keep it in this moment. And if you find that it's so much about the past for you, then maybe maybe that's a different conversation that you should be having about how you're still hurt about this thing from the past, or how you're concerned about this thing from the past, rather than arguing about whatever it is that triggered this. So that's one don't in a relationship, is don't bring up previous drama, past things. Another thing to steer clear from in a relationship is generalized, broad terms for things, like, saying something to your partner along the lines of, "You're so mean," calling them blanketly mean. Like, maybe they're doing something mean in that moment, but then you generalize them and call them mean, or like, "You're such an asshole," whatever. I mean, you could say, I think it's better to say, like, "That is such a mean thing to say," about whatever they just said. But blanketly calling somebody mean, assigning them as being a mean person, it's usually not true. And if it is true, then if someone is just mean or is an asshole, you probably shouldn't be with them, right? So if they're just being mean in that moment, or they said something mean, then be clear, make it specific, not general. That thing that you said is so mean, that thing you said is hurtful, rather than just say, "You're such a hurtful person, you're such a terrible person." I think that we need to steer clear of that type of terminology. You can say, "That was a terrible thing that you said, it really hurt my feelings," but don't say, "You're a terrible person." Those general things are triggering and they're harmful. And that goes along with more general terms, are like, "You never do this, you never do that." I think it's better to ask for what you want. But saying never, saying "You always say this, you always do that," that's also gonna trigger somebody. And those types of general terms, they're usually never true. And again, if they are true, then maybe that's not the relationship for you. So think about that. Steer clear of those broad, general terms. Another thing I think we have to be careful of in an argument is comparing, whether we're comparing our partner to somebody else, or we're comparing their actions, past or present. I think comparison is always the thief of joy. And same goes if we're comparing ourselves. If we're having a moment where, our partner was doing something with somebody else or whatever, and then we start comparing ourselves because we're feeling jealous and insecure. I think we need to be cautious about that. I think it can be really unfair to compare our partners to somebody else, saying things like, "So-and-so never does this, so-and-so never does that." That's going to be triggering. That's not going to feel good. Something else that has no place in an argument is guilt tripping. Now, how many of us are guilty of guilt tripping? I know I am. I'm definitely guilty of that. It's a really hard one to avoid, especially, if you think you're right, or if you're right. It can be almost satisfying to try to guilt trip somebody, but at the end of the day, guilting someone is not a loving thing to do. Guilt sucks. It sucks to feel guilt. It sucks to feel shame. So while we might want somebody to have remorse for what they did or what they said, while we might want them to take responsibility and apologize and have remorse, guilting them, giving them a guilt trip, or trying to make them feel guilty and ashamed, I mean, that's you probably on par with whatever they did to deserve that. We don't want to do that to our partners. We don't want to make them feel guilty or shame, not if we love them. So I would say avoid guilt tripping, avoid shaming your partner. People also tend to get passive aggressive in arguments, and they can be passive aggressive. They can use the silent treatment, and all of that kind of plays into the guilt tripping as well. But again, Nobody, like, think about it. When somebody acts passive aggressively towards you, like, doesn't that suck? Don't be shitty. Just because someone was shitty to you, your partner was shitty to you, or you're upset with them, or you're arguing, that doesn't give you carte blanche to be shitty back. So I say, watch out for passive aggressive behaviors, being passive aggressive in an argument. Watch out for using the silent treatment. That's kind of a self-righteous, obnoxious thing to do, and it doesn't feel good. And the goal of, you don't win an argument by making your partner feel like shit, right? It's arguments, again, there shouldn't be winners or losers. If you're having an argument, it should be to flesh out whatever the disagreement is and to come to an understanding. That should be the goal of an argument. And, another thing that's a don't of arguments is don't try to win. Don't try to win. There's an expression. You can be right or you can be happy. Don't try to be right. Don't try to win. Try to get your point across in as constructive and loving way as you can. One last thing that I would say when it comes to don'ts of arguments is never use somebody's insecurities against them. That's really detrimental and really hurtful. If somebody has a fear of abandonment, then don't threaten to leave them every time things get hard. It's really evil. And I've been on the receiving end of that. I have had people frequently use my insecurities against me because I have a lot. I'm very insecure. It's a very easy thing to use against me, but it really hurts. And I'm certain I've been guilty of the same, though I've really tried to be better these days. I think I'm not so bad about that now, but I've certainly been on the receiving end, and it's harsh and it's unnecessary, and it really doesn't do any good. It doesn't make me see whatever that person wants me to see by pulling my insecurities in and using them against me. It's just not a fair thing to do. So if somebody's insecure about, their family or some qualities that they have, some physicality that they have, a mental attribute that they have, or they have an insecurity like I do that's like a fear of abandonment thing, don't use that against them. If they have a fear of abandonment, don't threaten to leave. Because you're just triggering, and I think the right way to resolve an argument is not by triggering each other. That's just going to keep it going. It's just going to keep it going. But it's to listen and to understand. So, which brings me to the next portion of this, the do's of arguments. Let's talk about what to do in an argument, how to resolve an argument. It's very important to listen in an argument. Each person needs to get their opportunity to speak, and that means that you have to listen. And if you really want to be the big person, then listen first to what the other person has to say. Listen to them. Just listen. Don't interrupt. Do not interrupt. Let them get it all out. Even if what they're saying is triggering and you disagree and that's not right and that's not true. Rah! Doesn't matter. Bite your tongue. Hold on to it. Wait. Let them get it all out. Let them get it all out. And when they've got it all out, then it can be your turn to get it all out. If you already got all your stuff out and they're getting it all out, then wait till they get it all out to respond. Just let each person needs their time to talk without being interrupted. And, lay down the ground rules when it's time for you to tell your version of things or get everything that you want to say out there. Make sure your partner understands that they're not to interrupt you either. And if they interrupt you, just say, please let me finish and go on. And, if they keep interrupting, you can say, I really need to get my words out without interruption. Please let me finish. And if they keep interrupting, then maybe they're not a good partner. So that's that one. This is one of my favorites. I think it's really important and I think I mentioned this in my conflict resolution video, which is this is sort of a deepening of that. It's really important when you are having an argument with someone to not say, you do this, you do that, pointing the finger. I didn't talk about that in my notes because I talked about it in my conflict resolution video. But with that, in my do's in this, I say use I statements. I, me, this hurt my feelings. I feel this way. When this happens, when you say X, I feel this. It makes me feel this way. Really frame everything around yourself and your feelings. It's going to be less triggering. And like I've said before, it's much more triggering to say, you always do this, you always do that, than it is to say, when you say X, I feel Y. It hurts my feelings when you say this. It makes me feel sad. It makes me feel insecure. It triggers my anxiety. It triggers my fear of abandonment when you say X. That's a much less triggering way to bring it to someone. Something I should have said before too is after you do listen to the other person's point of view, story, side, it's really important to acknowledge and to validate, to say things like, I hear you. I understand your feelings. I hear you. I understand how you feel. Those type of things make a person feel safe and comfortable having this conversation with you. It's going to make them feel safer and more trustworthy of you if you validate them. If you make their feelings feel heard and understood and validated, they're going to feel safer. They're going to feel more comfortable. If you validate their feelings and their experience. Validation and acknowledgement, key. Acknowledge their feelings. Acknowledge the things that they say. Validate them. I understand how you feel. I get that. I hear you. These are terms that are very helpful. And it gives a lot of reassurance and it puts another person at ease when you use these types of statements. And like I mentioned before, in the don'ts, when I said don't try to win, the goal, of course, is to resolve. Seek to resolve, not to win, not to be right. Seek to solve whatever the issue is, whether it's your feelings and you feeling misunderstood or, they did something to you or it's them. Seek to resolve the issue. Seek a solution. That's the right thing to do in an argument. Seek a solution. Remember to take breaths. I think it's really important to take some long, deep breaths when you're having an argument because it helps calm you down. And if you really feel too triggered and too reactive, then maybe it's best to take a break, step away for a minute and just say, hey, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes and then I want to continue this conversation, or I need to step away for a minute. When is a good time to continue this conversation? I want to give you this time. I just don't want to be reactive because sometimes, we know we're going to be reactive. We know we're going to explode. So if you feel like your kettle's going to boil, then step away, take a breather, go for a walk, try to calm down. And if your partner is the one that does that, let them go. Do not stop them. Let them go. Sometimes people need to calm themselves down. I know when I was in my marriage, my ex-husband would get me super triggered, super fired up. And I was really practicing non-reactivity at the time. And so I really didn't want to react to him. I really wanted to do better, to be better, to not just react and lash out and fight. So I would have to walk away. I would have to be like, I'm going outside for a minute. And I would have to go outside and I'd have to walk and I'd have to calm myself down. Of course, he was antagonistic and a lot of times would try to not let me go. So I will say, if you're that person that needs to walk away, walk away. But if your partner's walking away now, with my current partner, with my current boyfriend, sometimes if we get in a debate, if we get in an argument, he gets fired up and triggered and he needs to walk away, and I never stop him. I always let him go because I know how it feels when somebody stops you. I know if you need to get out there and take a breath and walk around, you need to be able to do that. And I always give that to him. And he always comes back around a little calmer, a little better, a little more ready and able to resolve the conflict. So yeah, it's important. It's important to take breaths. It's important to take breaks if you need to, try to stay calm, try to stay listening, try to stay compassionate and understanding and validating. And when one person does that, even if the other person hasn't learned these skills that I'm talking about, even if your partner hasn't learned these skills, if you start bringing this into your conflicts, into your arguments, they're going to learn from you and they're going to start doing it too. That's usually the case. But even if they don't, it's just going to it'll make it easier for you if you bring these things in, and hopefully your partner will learn over time. You can ask listen to me. Listen to Debutante Renegade. You need to listen to Debutante Renegade. She's going to help you have arguments with me and make you less annoying. So that's an option too. Just send one to me. I'll take care of them. So that's pretty much the do's and don'ts of arguments. Remember, you can either be right or you can be happy. Which one do you want to be? I know lots of people who would rather be right than be happy, but I'd rather be happy. So if that's you, then I hope this was helpful. I hope it can help you have easier disagreements and conflicts in your relationships and resolve them more calmly and smoothly. If you try any of these, please let me know how they work or don't work. If something doesn't work, let me know. And if you have something you think really works, let me know that too. You can always email me at debutanterenegade@gmail.com. That's in the description box below as well. Remember to give me a like, subscribe. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a beautiful rest of your day.